Daily, and on behalf of Global Knowledge, welcome to today's webinar, How to Maximize Your Training Budget. Zane Schwer, Senior Marketing Manager, and Ryan Day, Content Marketing Manager at Global Knowledge. Zane and Ryan are keen on making the lives of training managers, learning and development professionals, and IT professionals who oversees training much easier. So they do that through creating content that answers questions learning and development professionals are asking, to provide insights and best practices on how a global training company like Global Knowledge approaches training. So now I'll hand it over to Zane and Ryan to teach us how we can maximize our training budget.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Sarah. And everyone, thank you so much for attending this webinar. We hope it's going to be informational and help you walk away with some new tidbits. So kicking things off, why are we all here? So we all understand the value of training, but when it comes to organizing, prioritizing, distributing, and even finding funds, it's easier said than done in the training world. So that's point one. The second thing is we've found some troubling trends in our global IT skills and salary report. It is the largest survey of IT professionals around the world, and we found these staggering stats. 41% of IT decision makers have no training budget. 59% of IT decision makers have a training budget, but 42% of IT decision makers that have a budget don't approve training. So we have organizations, almost 50% of organizations that don't have a training budget. And then for organizations that do have a training budget, 42% aren't even approving training. So that should definitely be raising red flags to training coordinators, learning professionals, and decision makers around the globe. We're also here because as a global training company, we see a range of situations that we want to share best practices, tips, and resources to help make sure that you, yourself, your team, and your organization are getting the training that you all need. And then for the 41% that don't have a budget, we're going to show you and highlight cash alternatives to be able to fund training. And then for the 42% who didn't use their budget, we're going to show some and provide some tips on how to prioritize and help realize the value of training. We're also going to show how to help identify and utilize funds you might not even know are there. And then we're going to show you some real world scenarios. You can read all you want, but once you kind of see how things actually happen in the real world, you can apply that to your daily job and activities. So the reason, how to maximize training is the title of this webinar, and there are numerous ways to buy training. A la carte is the most traditional one. You get to find a course you want and you go buy it. But there are other ways that we're going to cover throughout this webinar, which are prepays, special offers, credits and vouchers, private group training, and tuition reimbursement. But before we get into the buying training, which if you just jump right into that, that's really a fire, aim, ready approach to training. Whereas you really want to have a ready, aim, fire approach when it comes to spending and investing in training. And what is that really? That's a strategy. And that's where Ryan's going to kick off for a few slides and talk about how approaching your training budget with a strategy is going to help make your lives a whole lot easier.
Great, thanks, Zane. So yeah, when we're talking about strategy, we're really talking about creating a training game plan, and this should be pre-purchase. You want to do your homework, make sure you know what type of skills you need before you purchase training. So to do that, we've created 4 questions we want you to ask and answer before you purchase. So in order, they are, what's your most critical project? And I'll explain in a moment how to determine that. Number 2, who should train? So who involved on those projects needs training the most, needs to build skills the most? Number 3 is budget, and this is third for a reason. These are meant to be taken in order. We don't want you to start with a focus just on your budget. If you start by just focusing on budget, you're going to limit yourself from the get-go. We want you to create your ideal training scenario, then approach it from a budgetary perspective. And then 4, what does success look like? Document this, document your goals before you train. So we'll go through all of these one by one. So first, you want to list out your critical projects. List all known projects. And if you have a project manager, hopefully they'll have a list of active projects already. Now we italicize known. I want to emphasize this. We know things pop up out of nowhere. You may have shown up to work today and had 3 new projects you didn't even know were there. But if you already have a list of projects, you know where those new ones can slide in. And then we also need you to go through and ID the skill needs for each project. And we acknowledge this is a huge endeavor. It's not a single step. It's going to require some work on your end. You want to speak with everyone involved, know what skills they have, which skills they need. You're going to have to do some research on your own, maybe even speak with a training provider to get some outside expertise. And some skill needs won't immediately be apparent when you kick off a project, so you're going to have to remain flexible. So you have your list of active projects. You want to rank them by criticality, the most critical ones at the top. So talk to the stakeholders. Is it high risk or high value to the business? What's the priority level? This will help you rank your projects and campaigns. And then criticality of skills. You're going to hear us use this phrase often. This is a big deal at Global Knowledge going forward. When we say criticality of skills, we're talking about the skills that are critical for organizational success. When you determine your critical skill needs, then you can better determine what type of training to pursue. So what we're talking about is nice to have skills versus need to have skills. Your nice to have skills, those are the interesting and emerging skills that maybe aren't so high value to your organization. Those are ones that, maybe a Google search will suffice, maybe an e-learning library. And I always like to preface, whenever I mention e-learning library, those are terrific and they serve a specific purpose. They're meant to complement more formal training. But if you intend for an e-learning library to be your only training means for an entire year, make sure you ask yourself this question: are you okay with no expert interaction for a full year? So speaking of expert interaction, those need to have skills, the critical ones, the high value ones. You want an instructor-led training course. Those are your more formal in-person or virtual classroom courses where you have that expert access, because that access is necessary to help build skills that are critical to your job and project success. So number 2, who should train? You've got your list of critical projects. Who involved on those projects needs to train? Does everyone need training? Are we talking about individual skills or team skills, new skills or enhanced skills? So new skills are ones your organization doesn't have, your team doesn't have. When we're talking about enhanced skills, we're talking about enhancing the base skills that your employees already have, the ones that they were hired for, probably the ones that they gained in college. And with the changing IT landscape, you're going to have to enhance your skills over and over again throughout your career. And then obviously, how many people need to train? This will be really important once we get to the budgeting stage. And then what's the desired learning environment? What is the best way for this group of people to learn? And are we talking about one individual who needs one class, or is it a group who needs training? They all need the same training course. And there are training providers like Global Knowledge that can help with this. Give them a call, map out exactly what you need. Say, look, I've got these 10 people in these job roles. I have these goals. I expect this out of training. A good training provider will be able to provide you a roadmap for training success. You just need to ask them. Give them a call, ask them for help. And then there are different delivery formats that provide all the flexibility you need. So at Global Knowledge, we have multiple formats. We have Classroom. That's your in-person. It's a more immersive environment. You go to a class, you have the instructor there, you can interact with other students. And then other options, we have our virtual classroom, our on-demand, and a blended option. The blended is a mixture of our on-demand and instructor-led training. So the last 3, virtual, on-demand, blended, those are your more flexible options with no travel involved. All right, so we're to number 3, we're finally to budget. This can be the hard part, especially if you have a dwindling IT training budget. And we know across the industry, training budgets are shrinking. So you really need to strategize and prioritize your funding based on your skills need, okay? It can be a dose of reality, but if you've completed questions 1 and 2, you have your ideal training scenario. It's just the hard part is trying to fit all of your training needs into your budget. So you really need to prioritize your money. This is where your list of nice to have versus need to have skills really comes into play. Those need to have skills, they need formal training when possible. So that might mean those interesting or emerging skills, the less critical ones, might not get any training budget. So hopefully you can add those skills through self-study, through social interaction, or maybe even a self-paced library. Unfortunately, those less critical skills might get no training. And then if you're working with a project owner, talk to them and ask them if there's a built-in budget. A lot of projects have built-in budgets. Maybe some can be allocated for training resources. And always be realistic when it comes to budget. This can be difficult, but you need to be honest. Be honest with yourself, with the stakeholders, with your boss. It's not an excuse if you don't have enough money for training, okay? If there will be consequences if training is underfunded. So set realistic expectations. Don't set yourself up for failure. And then when you actually do spend that budget, make sure you're spending it in the right areas. I'm going to use e-learning libraries as another example. Universally, they serve a very specific purpose, and they're great for refreshing skills throughout the year. You have that subscription, you can go to it when you need it. It can complement your classroom courses. But completion rates universally are low. So you want to check with the people, you want to check the reports to make sure that your employees are taking training and finishing training. And you want to speak with those people who are training to make sure that these type of subscriptions are valuable. If those subscription rates are, if the completion rates on those e-learning self-paced courses are low, you really have two options. You can add more structure to them. So they're self-paced, it provides a lot of flexibility so people can train whenever they want, but sometimes you want to add some structure to make sure that those courses are being completed. So schedule a couple hours a week to make sure employees are training, that's their sole focus so they can get those completion rates up. Or you can look in another direction. Maybe instead of having 20 people have access to an e-learning library, maybe you pick 5 of them and you spend those funds on an in-person classroom course. That might be more beneficial. So you do have options. And then finally, number 4, what does success look like? You want to write down your goals before training occurs so you can revisit them afterwards. List them out. It can be anything from, growing revenue to deploying a product on time, creating a product. You want to make sure that training pays off. And sometimes you won't know that unless you can go revisit your goals prior to training. And after training, the results should be immediately noticeable if they were a success. You want to know how to spot success so you can duplicate it in the future. Speaking about the future, we highly recommend you schedule a post-training debrief. Schedule it in advance prior to training, because after training, after you complete a project, I understand we're all busy. You all want to move on to that next thing, but the post-training debrief is crucial. So that's when you can revisit those initial goals and really determine, was this type of training a success? You want to spot that success so you're not guessing and checking in the future. You can also use the post-training debrief, not just to review your goal, to make a plan for maintaining those new skills you just added. And in terms of spotting success, for managers, your employees, the people who trained, are they solving problems more easily now? Are they more productive? And if you're the student who took the training, you're going to know whether you're more productive or not. But are you completing tasks more quickly? And are you a better resource for your coworkers? And now I'm going to pass it back to Zane, and he's going to walk you through some ways to purchase training.
Excellent, thank you, Ryan. So before I kick this off, one thing that I just want to reiterate, just from what Ryan said, and then what I'm about to say, is that this is very high level what we're going through. We're going through a lot of things quickly, and we can absolutely go into more detail for each one. But just setting expectations that this is a high level, showing you what is out there. So our first one are prepays. So our prepay agreement. So they lock in a discounted training rate by investing your funds up front. So if you got your budgets last month or this month, and that you want to invest that in training, you would say to using your training provider, whether it's Global Knowledge or somebody else, say, hey, I have $100,000. I know I'm going to invest this in training. I'm going to provide this to you, and then that training provider is going to give you a discount on the course. So the benefits for prepays, it reduces the risk of use it or lose it. So if you come to the end of the year and you still have money, you can invest a prepay into the following year and have those funds be applied to next year. You're not forced to determine your training needs immediately. So yes, it's February right now. You might know what training needs you have for the upcoming year, but you might not. So you're getting that money set aside so it's not going to be taken away. And that goes to my next bullet point of protecting against the surprise budget fluctuations. And by that I mean your budget gets taken away. Get that money somewhere safe so if a budget fluctuation does happen, you're not losing it. And then finally, reduce the level of effort around payments and billing. Prepay reduces the paperwork and reduces the typical level, higher level of effort it comes to needing to procure and purchase training. Next up, we have promotions, and Ryan will touch on that.
All right, promos. So look, we all get a ton of promo emails a day from all types of different companies. And honestly, they're annoying until you need something, right? So when you need training, they're perfect. It's perfect to look for them. Go to training websites, see what they're offering. You can get training at a discount. So Global Knowledge, for example, offers limited time offers like flash sales. Also website exclusives where you can enter a promo code at checkout and a discount is attached. There's also membership discounts. So Global Knowledge partners with top tech vendors and supports their user groups with exclusive discounts. And don't forget to check out social media. Tech providers, vendors, they're going to advertise their current promotions on Twitter and Facebook. So you just need to know where to look to score these discounts.
And Ryan, don't we have something for participants today?
Exactly right, Zane. So as a thank you for attending, we're offering 40% off your next Global Knowledge course. We'll have more details on that at the end of the webinar.
Excellent, thanks, Ryan. All right, so moving on to tuition reimbursement. So this is no longer just for traditional continued education. And what I mean by that, typically, if you're pursuing your MBA, where it's evolved to is that top-tier training providers are actually now partnering with accredited colleges for technical training, whether you're pursuing just overall technical skills or pursuing an actual certification. So if you're an employee, what you want to do is review your employee benefits, and if you can't find those or it's not listed, check with HR and see if you have a tuition reimbursement program. If you're an employer, tuition reimbursement is certainly more attractive to larger organizations. It is tax deductible per employee, but success is really found when you develop a partnership, a program, and a strategy with the provider. So the customers that we work with that have tuition reimbursement from the get-go said, this is what we're trying to do. How can you as a training provider help us work with an accredited college to handle and manage our tuition reimbursement? So if that's something of interest to you, you'll definitely be able to follow up with us after the webinar.
Private group training. So we mentioned earlier the criticality of skills, and that for the most critical skills, you really want that instructor-led training. So let's take that a step further and say you've got a group. Maybe it's a group that's working on a key project for an organization. You want an instructor teaching that group. So that's where private group training comes in. It's group training in a private environment. And what is it? It's got a customized curriculum and environment where internal processes can be shared and understood. It's scalable for any size group, large or small, and it can be taken virtually or in person. We'll send the instructor to you. And then typically, in terms of cost savings to maximize your budget, private group trainings have reduced cost per student compared to most public training schedules.
And guess one thing that I really want to re-stress, Ryan, is the ability to share internal company information freely when you do a private group training session. It's just your employees, so whatever processes or proprietary information that you have that you wouldn't be able to freely share in an open enrollment or a public classroom session is really key, which then is further enhanced by having the reduced cost per student. So moving to training credits, what are they? They're issued by tech providers as a way to help drive the most value out of your training investment. So if you're spending $10,000, $500,000, $1 million plus on software and hardware, you want to make sure that your people have the skills to drive the most out of that technology. It also helps reduce that risk of technical debt. If you bring on that new software and you start finding workarounds and whatnot, well, big picture, that's going to create more problems than it's worth. Whereas if you just train with these training credits right off the bat, your life will be easier, and your team's life will be easier, and your organization's life will be easier. Now, typical providers that provide training credits, Cisco, Citrix, Juniper, Microsoft, and VMware are some of them. And even Global Knowledge, through our Global Knowledge training credits, offer training credits as well. So do you have them? Unfortunately, a lot of customers we find don't realize they have them until it's too late. So what you want to do is ask around internally. Be in constant communication with tech buyers in your organization, because you might have a lot, or you can start requesting them. And I'll go into some best practices next. So know your balance and when they expire. Like I alluded to and said on the previous slide, unfortunately, a lot of these credits expire, and that's money you are throwing out the door. So you want to know your balance, you want to know when they expire. Know what they can be applied to. So using Cisco Learning Credits, or CLCs as an example, for Global Knowledge, they can be applied to courses, they can be applied to promotions, they can be applied to purchasing additional lab time. Those are just some of the examples of what vendor credits can be applied to. Assign an internal contact. That's really important for that person to then know your balance, know when they expire, and can manage just the whole ecosystem around your training credits. And then let your training account manager know. Regardless of your training provider, let them know that you have these, so then that they can help you properly allocate and budget and price out your training. And then finally, they're only accepted at authorized training providers. So Cisco, Citrix, VMware, Microsoft, they all have authorized training providers that are the only place where you can redeem your training credits, or training vouchers is what they're also called. So if you're asking yourself, well, Zane, what's the difference between training credits and a prepay agreements? I'm going to give you a high-level overview of the differences. So for training credits, they are tied to one tech vendor. So if you buy Cisco Learning Credits, they can only be applied to Cisco training courses. Whereas with a prepay agreement, you have the flexibility to train on anything in that training company's catalog. For training credits, sometimes they're a better dollar-for-dollar deal. I'll go into that into more detail in the next slide. But typically, they are a dollar for dollar. Whereas with a prepay agreement, you're getting a discounted rate regardless of the course. And then for training credits, they're only accepted at authorized vendors, like I called out in the previous slide. And then a prepay agreement, it's only accepted at that training company. So where this leads us to next is that strategic partnering when it comes to figuring out, all right, if I have a limited budget, how can I get more budget or find ways to sneak training into purchases? One way is to negotiate training into IT purchases. Now, if there are non-IT people on the call, I mean, just it's into general purchases that would require training. So why do you want to do this? Well, it avoids or reduces drawing from your standard employee development budget by factoring it into the purchase of the equipment or software. And then also, typically when you're buying software or hardware, at the time of sale, the tech provider is more keen to provide discounted rates on those vendor training credits. So where I had that italicized, sometimes training credits are a better dollar-for-dollar deal. This is an opportunity when it is a good deal. So you definitely want to jump on these opportunities. And then the other way for strategic partnering is working with other departments in combining your budgets. I mean, the more funds you have together, you can combine, the higher your buying power. So as an example, since Global Knowledge, our portfolio is very wide and very deep, we have IT departments, we have project management departments, and we have business analyst departments that combine their funds and purchase training through us, because they get more dollar for dollar with their prepay agreements. And then finally, if you work in government, this is a whole other animal. So I'm going to go very quickly over this, but my message is don't go at it alone. It's government, there's red tape, it's complicated. Work with a training provider that supplies you with whether it's an account manager or an account team that knows the ins and outs of how to procure training for government agencies. And to highlight just a couple programs that Global Knowledge offers, for the United States, we have 5 programs. And then for Canada, we have a program as well for that. So now we're going to move on to some scenarios that will help you see how to apply, actually how to apply, but ways to be able to maximize your budget.
All right, thanks, Zane. So scenario 1 is the end of the year and you still have funds left in your training budget. This is a use it or lose it scenario. So if you don't spend that training money, it won't roll over to the next year. So what do you do? Well, if you know your needs, if you created that critical skills list, you know who in your organization needs to train, book a course. Book it now while you have budget. You don't want to leave that money on the table and have it disappear when the fiscal year ends. But if you don't specifically know your needs at that moment, a prepay agreement is a great idea. You can pay now, lock in your rate, and then choose your courses later the next year when you need them. And then you always want to avoid this training purchase pitfall. Don't buy a course until you've defined your skills needs. And when possible, speak with a rep who can help you find the right course. There are a lot of courses out there. They're not all perfect for you. So make sure you know what you need before you purchase.
All right, our next scenario is you can only buy one course per employee. So Oliver Twist wants some more training, but he's not getting more. So as an employee, you want to talk with your manager, talk with a training advisor, and view top courses or learning paths your manager will traditionally know where your skills gaps are the most. But if they're not too sure, reaching out to a training advisor or seeing what other top courses are will help give you some insights. If you're a training coordinator or an L&D professional, talk with management, talk with the training advisor. I'm sure you all are very familiar with this, but just a constant reminder is always good to have. For both employees and training coordinators and L&D professionals, quizzes and assessments, those can be distributed to the people that need training to identify where their skills gaps are and where they're weak, where they're strong. And then subscriptions. So using our Ultimate IT Skills subscription as an example, there are a lot of courses in that. So if you can only get one course, but you're not sure what it is yet, that's an option as well. And our next scenario, Ryan will take.
Great. So in this scenario, you have a $15,000 training budget. You also have a bunch of training vouchers and credits. You got Cisco learning credits. You got Microsoft Software Assurance training vouchers. Maybe you have some credits you don't even know about. And you also have a lot of people to train. So what do? You contact your account manager. This can be complicated. Whether your $15,000 is a large budget or a small budget for you, there's a lot of moving parts to this. It's okay to ask for help. Talk to the experts, give Global Knowledge a call. They can help you plan and maximize your investment. So just pick up the phone.
Yeah, just to build off of that, Ryan, I mean, really leveraging your account manager is a blessing. I mean, I think we all, I know, for at least speaking for me personally, the less logistic busy work that I can do, the happier I am, so I can focus on the more strategic and exciting applications of my job. That's why one of the reasons why training companies provide an account manager. They want to help make your life easier, so then you can go back to your organization and drive those higher value add activities to show the value of training.
All right, scenario 4. You have an 8+ person team that needs the same skills. For example, maybe they're prepping for a certification. So what do? Private group training is your best option. This is what we already talked about. You get everyone in the same room and ensure they leave that training with the same knowledge, the same transferable skills. And it's great for your budget too. It comes at a discount. It's reduced travel. It's a location that you're comfortable with, and it's only your employees. You get an entire team together, get them interacting with the same instructor. They're all hopefully going to build the same skills, and hopefully it ensures project success.
And then our next one, no budget. Yeah, we never want to deal with this, but unfortunately, that's the reality sometimes. So what's the solution for this? You start knocking on some doors. You want to work with those decision makers, with those people that are managing projects or are responsible for purchasing, saying, hey, can we factor in and request some training when you're purchasing that software or that equipment? You want to combine department funds. So as I mentioned earlier, we have some IT teams, some project management teams, and some business analyst teams that combine their funds into a prepay to make things work, get more for their dollar. Whereas as by themselves, they really don't have a budget. And then finally, those vendor credits. So if people are buying that software and that equipment, and that money is allocated to those purchases, sneaking in, not so much sneaking in, but getting those vendor credits into the sale helps fund training. And those are our scenarios. So what are the next steps after this from this presentation? The first one is work on and answer the questions about skills needs. If you've already done this, fantastic. We would encourage you just to go back and revisit and get a refresher. But if you haven't done it, just jump right in. If it's a new muscle that you're flexing, it's going to feel a little odd. It might be a little frustrating at first, but the only way you get better at it is doing. And if you are struggling with it, pick up the phone, speak with a training advisor, and get some best practices. And then, if you want to learn more or take advantage of, prepays, vendor credits, private group training, tuition reimbursement, well, what you want to do is talk with an account manager. And if you don't have one, and you have a training company in mind, 1-800 number, our phone number is 1-800-courses. So those are the next steps. So in addition, help us further help you. And we have Tom Cruise endorsing us, so that's always a good thing. As Sarah kicked off the call, Ryan and my focus is to help make your all's life easier. So I know we've covered a lot of content on here, but we also are probably sure that we've missed something. So we want to know what we've missed and what you want to know more about. So please, please, please email Ryan and myself. My email is zane.schweer@globalknowledge.com. And Ryan's is ryan.day@globalknowledge.com. We'd love to hear from you, the good and the bad. We have thick skin, so we won't cry if you didn't like what we did. And then kind of just wrapping things up, some resources that we're going to be sending to you next Tuesday with the follow-up email for the presentation is a comprehensive, complete guide for how organizations buy training. We'll send you a link to special offers, some information on training credits and vouchers, and then this training planner. So we've been working on this new training planner. You all will be the first group of people to see it. We would love your feedback on it. The goal of it is to help make your life easier. If you have a better one out there, we'd love your feedback. Like I said, Ryan and I provided our emails. We'd love to hear from you because our goal is to help make your life easier so you can focus on the higher value added opportunities in your day-to-day job.
Okay, so I do have a couple questions here. So first one, what's the ideal group size for private training?
Great question. So it typically starts around 8 people. It has gone down to 6 sometimes. It just depends on for that instance, it was dependent on the content and the customer schedule. But traditionally we see at 8 people, and then it goes up typically to about 24, 26 people. So that's typically the threshold that we're seeing. But of course, if it's something that if you really need to have that, that secrecy and that privacy component to it, that's where talking with an account manager about what your specific needs are. Since Global Knowledge is a customer-first organization, we do our best to make sure that we're meeting the needs of each customer.
Okay, so you went through a couple different scenarios, but is there what's the scenario where you would choose private training over individual training?
So for that, if everybody needs the same, has the same skills needs, so if everyone needs to get certified in a certification, private group training would be fantastic for that because everyone needs to learn the same things and at a discounted rate. If you have a lot of one-off skills needs, so if you have a team of 8 people and each person has their own individual, they're pursuing their individual certification or have an individual skills needs, that's when using the public schedule, the open enrollment as we call it, schedule would be the best bet.
Did you guys have any other like closing thoughts before we shift over?
The last comment that I have, and I just want to re-stress it, is that we are a customer-first organization, and we want to make your lives easier. So Ryan and I, we are serious that if you let us know how we can make your life easier, and we will do everything that we can to make that happen. Can't make any promises, but we really want to know what drives you all nuts. What do you wish you could go away when it comes to training, logistics, and coordination, so that ultimately there's no anywhere else other than Global Knowledge, because we help make your life so much easier. That'd be my final comment. Ryan, do you have anything?
No, just that we're always here to help. We understand that a lot of budgets are getting cut, and it's really overwhelming. And that pick up the phone, give us a call, shoot us an email. We're here to help. We understand the issues you guys are going through, and hopefully what we presented today there's something in there that can help you maximize your budget.
All right. Well, I wanted to thank both of you for taking the time to walk us through how to maximize training budgets. So also just wanted to say in closing, a lot of those great resources that Zane and Ryan had mentioned are also available on the Global Knowledge website, along with lots of other free resources, access to more webinars like these, white papers, articles. So it's a great area to start supplementing your learning as well, and figure out where your next paths are if you're in between certifications or trying to figure out your next steps.